Ladies and gentlemen, today is not just another day in the global arena. Today, the ground beneath diplomacy trembles. Today, the silent war of intentions becomes loud. America has struck deep, beyond surface-level threats, beyond rhetoric, targeting the very heart of secrecy, the hidden nuclear sites of Iran. This wasn't just a military action. This was a message, crafted with precision, launched with purpose, and delivered with unwavering clarity. We see what others choose to ignore. We act when others remain silent. But something remarkable has emerged from the dust and fire: defiance. Not cowardice, not retreat, but a bold stance. Iran stands firm, not as a shattered nation, but as a symbol of resilience in the face of extraordinary pressure. And here's what we must understand. In the noise of missiles and political statements, something deeper echoes, something about what it means to have conviction, something about the power of belief, something about choosing to stand even when the world tries to push you to your knees. This conflict is more than geopolitical strategy. It is a case study in leadership, willpower, and purpose. America did not strike randomly. It acted on intelligence, principle, and perceived necessity. But in response, Iran did not cower. Instead, it chose resolve. It chose dignity in the face of danger. It chose to hold onto its identity, even under the weight of shockwaves. What does that tell us? It tells us that power is not just about weapons. True strength is about what you're willing to endure for what you believe. True leadership is not measured in how loud your voice is in times of victory, but how steady your heartbeat is in times of crisis. This moment in history is a mirror, not just for nations, but for us as individuals. It shows us what happens when values collide with consequences. It challenges us to ask ourselves, what do we stand for? When the pressure rises, will we fold, or will we rise? We live in a time where many are waiting for someone else to act, to lead, to make the difference. But the truth is, no missile, no government, no superpower can substitute for the power of individuals who are clear on their why. When you know what you believe, when your cause is rooted in purpose, you become unshakable. True power begins with purpose, not force. This concept challenges the very foundation of what most people have been taught about strength, dominance, and influence. In a world obsessed with control and surface-level victory, it is easy to believe that whoever shouts the loudest or strikes the hardest automatically holds the power. But history, leadership, and real transformation tell a different story. Power without purpose is loud but empty. It may intimidate, but it rarely inspires. It may command obedience, but it never earns loyalty. On the other hand, when power is driven by a deep sense of purpose, it ignites movements, reshapes cultures, and redefines the future. The recent strike on Iran's hidden nuclear sites was more than just a tactical move. It was a symbol of decisive action born from a sense of responsibility. It wasn't about chaos or destruction for the sake of dominance. It was about drawing a line in the sand, declaring a stance, and acting upon what was perceived as a clear threat. It reflected the truth that when a nation or a person knows why they are doing something, they operate from a place of focused energy. They don't need to scream to be heard. Their actions speak with clarity because their intention is strong. Purpose is what keeps people going when the strategy fails, when the resistance rises, and when the outcome isn't immediate. Purpose gives meaning to sacrifice. It provides context to struggle. It makes the difference between someone who reacts out of fear and someone who responds with direction. In both global affairs and personal battles, purpose becomes the silent engine that drives consistency, bravery, and patience. Force might win battles, but purpose wins wars, especially the internal wars that no one else sees. A person armed with a reason is always more powerful than one armed only with resources. When individuals or nations are anchored in purpose, their decisions change, they think long-term, they build rather than just destroy. They weigh consequences not out of hesitation, but out of integrity. Purpose doesn't make people passive, it makes them precise. It refines their focus. It strips away the distractions of ego and turns attention toward impact. That kind of power doesn't burn out. It compounds over time. It builds trust, creates loyalty, and earns respect even from those who disagree. Every major transformation in history began not with a show of force, but with a bold idea, a purpose that could not be ignored. Revolutions were started by people who were outgunned but not out-purposed. Movements rose from those who had little in the way of weapons, but had everything when it came to belief. This principle applies to governments, to companies, and to individuals. When you know your why, your actions become powerful beyond measure because they are aligned with your values. You stop chasing applause and start building legacy. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. You stop playing small because you realize your cause demands something greater. Defiance is the mark of inner strength. In a world where submission is often disguised as diplomacy and silence is mistaken for peace, defiance stands as a rare, powerful quality. It is not about aggression or blind rebellion. It is about standing tall in the face of overwhelming pressure, staying grounded in your beliefs, and refusing to compromise your identity even when the cost is high. Iran's reaction to the targeted strikes on its hidden nuclear facilities was not one of panic or capitulation. Instead, it responded with posture, with pride, and with an unyielding presence that told the world, "We may be hit, but we will not be broken." That kind of stance does not come from surface-level confidence. It comes from something deeper. It comes from inner strength. Inner strength is forged in the fires of adversity. It is built when comfort is stripped away, when options become limited, and when challenges rise higher than expected. Many can stand tall when the sun is shining, but only the truly strong maintain their composure when the storm hits. Defiance, when rooted in conviction, becomes more than just resistance. It becomes a declaration of existence. It becomes the affirmation of self-worth, of dignity, and of belief. It is what allows someone or a nation to say, "We are more than your assumptions. We are not defined by your actions. We stand on our terms." In personal life, this same principle holds power. Every individual faces moments where external forces try to shape their narrative. There are times when expectations try to rewrite your values, when failures try to silence your voice, and when fear tries to make you invisible. It is in those moments that defiance is not only courageous, it is essential. It is the refusal to shrink, the choice to be visible, the will to speak even when your voice shakes. Defiance isn't about being loud, it's about being unwavering. It's about saying no when it's easier to say yes. It's about choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Inner strength doesn't develop by accident. It is the product of choices made in silence, of boundaries drawn in private, of moments where giving up was the simpler path, but you chose to keep going. Defiance, when fueled by purpose and guided by principle, is not chaotic. It is disciplined, it is measured, it is focused. It resists not for attention, but for authenticity. It fights not to destroy, but to protect what matters most. When Iran stood tall after the strikes, it became a symbol of what it means to remain rooted under fire. That image, regardless of politics or perception, resonates far beyond geopolitics. It's a human experience, because we all face strikes in our own lives, betrayals, losses, rejections, setbacks. The question is never if life will hit you, The question is whether you will remain standing after it does, and when you do, that's not weakness masked as stubbornness, that is defiance, that is inner strength declaring itself in its purest form. Crisis reveals character. It strips away the surface, tears through pretense, and lays bare the truth of who someone really is. In the comfort of routine and the predictability of everyday life, it's easy to present a curated version of yourself, strong, composed, and in control. But when crisis strikes, when the predictable shatters and you're thrown into chaos, there is no room for performance. What remains is your real self. It's in these moments that your core beliefs, your values, and your emotional discipline are tested, not in theory, but in real time. And that test doesn't just apply to individuals. It applies to nations, institutions, leaders, and movements. The recent confrontation between the United States and Iran didn't just mark a geopolitical flashpoint. It was a stage upon which the true character of each player was put under a global microscope. For America, the decision to strike was a test of conviction, of whether it would act on its words or simply posture. For Iran, the aftermath of the attack was a test of resilience, of whether it would fold under pressure or hold its ground. These weren't just political decisions, they were reflections of deeper identity and internal structure. When a nation is under threat, how it reacts speaks volumes about its inner framework, its discipline, its unity, and the strength of its leadership. But beyond governments and power struggles, there's a lesson for every individual. When crisis comes, your habits, your mindset, your emotional stability, and your values are what surface. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation and integrity. That's why people who appear strong on the outside often collapse under pressure. They've built an image, not a foundation. And on the other hand, those who are underestimated, those who are quiet and humble, sometimes reveal a level of strength that no one expected, because their character was real, not performed. Crisis doesn't create character, it exposes it. The work of character building happens long before the crisis arrives. It's built in your daily choices, in the disciplines you maintain when no one is watching, in the values you refuse to compromise even when it's inconvenient. It's built in how you speak to others when you're tired, in how you respond to failure, in how you treat people when there's nothing to gain. These are the quiet investments that make you unshakable when the storm hits. And when that moment comes, and it always does, everything that's hidden becomes visible. Your leadership style, your belief system, your emotional control, your resilience. They all rise to the surface for the world to see. In those moments, clarity is born. You suddenly understand the gaps in your character, the strengths you didn't realize you had, and the areas where you must grow. Crisis becomes a mirror, reflecting both the beautiful and the broken. It invites transformation, but only if you're willing to face what it reveals. It offers no shortcuts, no filters, no scripts. It simply demands the truth, and in doing so, it shows who's truly built to lead and who's merely playing the role. Purpose makes you unshakable. In a world that constantly pulls in 100 directions, where noise often overshadows clarity and pressure tempts people to compromise, purpose acts as the unwavering compass. It is the force that keeps individuals, organizations, and even nations grounded in the midst of turbulence. It isn't just a slogan or an abstract idea. It's the deep-rooted understanding of asterisk, why asterisk you exist, what you stand for, and what you are willing to sacrifice for. When that sense of purpose is firmly embedded within, no amount of external chaos can throw you off course. Purpose creates a level of emotional, mental, and strategic stability that nothing else can provide. When America made the decision to strike Iran's hidden nuclear sites, that action did not emerge from impulse. It was the result of a clearly defined belief that certain lines must not be crossed, that the security of the nation and the global balance of power could not be left to chance. Right or wrong, the act was driven by purpose, and on the other side, when Iran responded not with surrender, but with controlled defiance, it too operated from a place of deeply ingrained conviction. Both actions demonstrate a powerful principle. When you are anchored in purpose, you do not flinch. You do not scatter when threatened. You choose your response, not based on emotion or ego, but on alignment with your deeper mission. In everyday life, this same principle applies with equal intensity. People who lack purpose are easily shaken. They chase trends, they rely on others for validation, and they crumble when things get difficult. But those who know who they are and why they do what they do are different. Their identity doesn't change with circumstances. Their energy isn't dependent on applause. Their commitment doesn't dissolve when things go wrong. Instead, purpose becomes their stabilizer. It holds them steady when everything else around them feels uncertain. Purpose also sharpens decision-making. It cuts through confusion. When opportunities arise, when challenges present themselves, or when temptations to compromise appear, someone with a strong sense of purpose doesn't hesitate. They've already predecided what matters. They're not scrambling to weigh every option. They're measuring every decision against the standard of their why. That clarity is rare, but it's powerful. It means they can move quickly, speak confidently, and act decisively, even when the stakes are high. Furthermore, purpose fuels endurance. Motivation comes and goes. Excitement fades, but purpose sustains. It's what allows someone to keep showing up even when the results aren't visible yet. It's what gives meaning to sacrifice, and what turns struggle into growth. It transforms pain into fuel and setbacks into redirection. A purpose-driven person doesn't see failure as the end, but as a necessary chapter in a much larger story. That story is what keeps them going. That story is what makes them unstoppable. And when others look on, unsure of how to respond, unsure of how to act or where to turn, it is the person with purpose who rises, not because they have all the answers, but because they have something far more powerful, a direction that cannot be shaken. Leadership is a choice, not a title. It is not something handed down by authority or granted through position. It is something claimed through action, conviction, and responsibility. The world often confuses leadership with status, assuming that those who hold power or wear uniforms are automatically leading. But true leadership is not about who stands in front of the microphone. It's about who steps forward when things fall apart. It's about who chooses to carry the weight when others retreat. It's about who decides to take ownership when there's nothing to gain and everything to risk. Leadership begins in the quiet moment when someone chooses to be accountable, to be courageous, and to act with integrity in the face of fear, doubt, or uncertainty. The recent escalation between America and Iran may have been orchestrated by people in power, but the ripples it created extended far beyond government chambers. In times of crisis, it's not just world leaders who are being tested. It's everyday people. Citizens, soldiers, thinkers, entrepreneurs, teachers, families, everyone is affected and everyone has a role to play. Leadership shows itself when a mother explains the conflict to her child without letting fear win. It shows when a young adult uses their voice to bring clarity and unity to their community. It shows when someone chooses hope over panic, solutions over blame, and wisdom over impulse. These are not positions, they are choices. Choices made daily by those who understand that leadership is a behavior, not a badge. Too many people wait for permission to lead. They believe they're not ready, not qualified, or not influential enough. But leadership doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It means showing up even when you're unsure. It means standing firm even when the outcome is uncertain. Leadership doesn't require a crowd to follow. It requires the courage to step forward even if you're alone. It's the person who speaks up in a silent room, the one who acts when everyone else hesitates, the one who stands between chaos and calm, ready to take responsibility, not for glory, but for the good. The reality is, leadership often begins where comfort ends. It is forged in moments of discomfort, pressure, and sacrifice. It's choosing to stay late to solve a problem no one else wants to deal with. It's being the first to apologize, the first to forgive, the first to change direction when the current path no longer serves the mission. Leadership isn't about control, it's about service. It's not about command, it's about care. It's not about being loud, it's about being clear. And clarity is what people crave when everything feels uncertain. We all have the capacity to lead, not someday, not when we're more qualified, not when we've been promoted. Now, in the small decisions, in the unseen moments, in the hard conversations, and the brave choices, leadership is available to anyone willing to take responsibility for something bigger than themselves. Anyone who refuses to be a bystander in their own life or in the lives of others. It is a path open to all, but chosen by few, chosen by those who decide that action matters more than approval and purpose matters more than position. History is written by those who dare to lead. It is not shaped by the passive or the hesitant, but by those who decide to step into moments of uncertainty and create something meaningful from them. The events that define generations are never driven solely by circumstance. They are driven by people who chose to act while others stood still. Every era of transformation, every shift in society, every moment that becomes a milestone began with someone refusing to wait for the right conditions. They moved not because it was easy, not because they were fully prepared, but because they saw a need, felt a call, and had the courage to respond. In the case of America striking Iran's secret nuclear sites, and Iran responding with bold defiance, we see this principle reflected on a global scale. These were not moments of hesitation or indecision. They were bold, calculated actions taken by people who understood the weight of leadership. Whatever one's perspective on the politics, the underlying truth remains. These are the actions that become chapters in history books. They are studied, debated, and remembered not because they were flawless, but because they represented decisive leadership in high-stakes situations. And in a world that often promotes caution disguised as wisdom, daring to lead becomes not only rare, it becomes revolutionary. This same principle applies in every corner of life. History isn't just shaped by generals or presidents. It's shaped by individuals who rise in their own lives, the teacher who chooses to challenge a broken system, the entrepreneur who launches a bold idea despite the odds, the parent who raises children with vision and values in a world full of distractions, the student who stands against injustice on their campus, the worker who refuses to cut corners when integrity is on the line. These are the leaders history quietly honors, not always with fanfare, but with lasting influence. They choose action when others choose comfort. They decide that doing something, even if imperfect, is better than watching and wishing. The fear of failure paralyzes many, but those who understand that history favors the brave learn to move anyway. They understand that mistakes are part of the process, and that legacy isn't built through perfection. It's built through persistence. They don't wait for applause to validate their decisions. They move with conviction, not because it guarantees success, but because it aligns with their deeper values. They're not trying to please everyone, they're trying to make a difference. That kind of courage is contagious. It empowers others to act. It creates momentum. It sets a new standard for what is possible. And when the dust settles, when the noise fades, and the headlines change. What remains are the ripples created by those who dared to lead. The conversations they sparked, the lives they impacted, the systems they challenged, the futures they influenced. History may not record every name, but it always records the effect. It remembers the shifts. It echoes the courage, and it honors those who didn't just live through a moment, but chose to shape it.